up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Brutally Speaking Podcast, the official podcast of MetalNexus.net, where you can get all your show reviews, concert photos, and the latest going-ons and the nostalgic going-ons in the rock and metal world. With me, as always, is Daniel Terry. How are you doing this evening?
Doing good, man. I'm feeling nostalgic. It's like 1 minute I'm snapping my fingers, and the next minute I'm in a neck brace.
Well, with that intro, and if you haven't looked at your fucking screen, you'll see that this episode's guest is Tommy Victor of the legendary Prong. You might also know him from his time in Danzig as his guitar player, but more importantly, Tommy Victor of fucking Prong. Their latest EP, Age of Defiance, is probably out now as of when you're listening to it. It is not out as of when we're recording this. Solid EP. The live tracks are fucking great. The two new songs are... Age of Defiance is... Jesus, it's a fucking groove, brutal song. Like, I turned it on, I was like... Yeah, I'm going to need to go back and listen to a lot more Prong. Prong is just one of those bands, actually, and I'm sure with discography discussion, you'll probably fall into this trapping all the time where you're like, yo, I knew I liked this record and I knew I liked this band, but then I just forgot how much I like everything this band does.
Oh, yeah, dude. Like, when I heard the EP, I was like, oh my goodness, this is, like, really energetic.
Yeah.
Like, more so than I was expecting. And because you look at a band like Prong, who's been around for, like, I don't know, 1,000 years. And the whole time I've been alive, Prong's always been a thing. But I mean, we're like, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like 12 albums?
Yeah.
And they're still putting out an EP that has like fresh, energetic material on it. I don't see that. And I'm listening to the songs and I'm like, this is the Prong that I always loved.
Yeah, it was a bit intimidating talking to Tommy. I mean, as podcast connoisseurs listening to a lot of podcasts in this genre that we're in, you know, I guess it's technically, according to the charts, it's like music commentary or whatever. I'm really used to hearing Tommy Victor on Josta's show, and it's been kind of surreal sometimes getting some of these guests that I'm so identified with being on Josta's show and being friends of Josta's and, you know, even collaborators in the case of, you know, with Tommy Victor, that it's one of those things where I was intimidated to talk to him, not only because of the legacy he has of being the frontman and guitar player of such a legendary band, because I have no rapport with him. And it's just kind of intimidating to try to talk to someone in 20 minutes that's been around that long and has such a thumbprint on the fucking scene. Like, they're kind of like COC in a sense of like they've transcended so many genres between hardcore, metal, kind of sludgy, doom. I mean, just every and anything really in the genre of quote unquote metal or hard rock. And to try to figure out what I'm going to spend my 20 minutes talking about is kind of tough.
It's kind of scary. You had to spend a little bit of it justifying, you know, like, hey, we're not going to make you talk about beer, because it seemed like he was kind of worried about that starting off.
Yeah, I definitely was getting built up, and let this be a lesson to never let your ego get in your own way, because I thought, you know, in doing this podcast and as it's kind of grown over the last, you know, year or so, it's been one of those things where sometimes, you know, publicists or the people coming on will tell you like, oh, I've heard this podcast, or I've heard of it, and I heard it's a show like this kind of on the up and up, and it's always flattering and you know, very much, you know, as if you can't tell, we're kind of self-deprecating at times, but it's one of those things like I never really know if I believe it. So when Tommy was like, oh, you know, kind of joking like, oh, I was kind of nervous, you know, to come on this show for this interview, and I thought it was to be like, you know, how John from Circleback was, where he was like, oh, like, I mean, I looked at your podcast and like, look at who you've had on recently, like, and, you know, some people throw, you know, self-deprecating back to us, but it's like, dude, you're fucking Tommy Victor. But beyond that, so I got real pumped for him to like build me up and be like, oh, you know, your great podcast, and, you know, heard so much about it, to then be like, hey, I don't drink and you guys are beer-based podcast. And I was like, ah, fuck. So like I was like building myself up for a nice compliment, only to kind of be like, get my legs taken out from underneath me. And then at that point, it kind of lit a fire under me to be like, no, we're more than that. Like,
yeah.
I feel like it's almost like being like the hot girl, where you're like, no. I mean, yeah, I know I'm smoking hot, but like I'm also smart and I have a lot to offer.
I got all this and brains too. Yeah.
Yeah. So at that point, I definitely kind of, you know, definitely kind of regrouped really quickly and decided at that point I really needed to bring my A game to Tommy, and I think I did a good job with it. I think I definitely turned it around. You know, I think it would have been really easy for a lot of people to maybe feel the pressure at that point of being like, oh fuck, like I'm kind of behind the 8 ball now, and just kind of let that bother and kind of steer the podcast as you're kind of going. But like I said, I think, now having done this for 3 years and kind of, knowing that what we do is more than that, it was like, I'm going to turn this around. I'm going to prove like why we're, I think what we are, and that we are a good podcast, and we do bring great questions that are kind of off the beaten path to these people. And I kind of like the fact that everything I was kind of throwing at Tommy, he was like, like these are things I'm still trying to figure out. And I think that's something that's been really interesting about our show and about a lot of these podcasts, honestly, is the fact that, you guys do it with discography discussion where sometimes, with some of these bands that you guys call like a sure thing, a slam dunk, that you're like, yeah, but like this record's good, but it's not as good as this other one, which is great. But I mean, this first thing, or the whole discography isn't bad by any stretch. It's better than most people's best.
Yeah.
But I wanted more, and so like we're at this weird point with media and consumption where I think it's just interesting where we're able to talk to artists, especially someone like Tommy who's been in the industry for so long and had such a long storied career, and it's like we're all kind of trying to figure out exactly what we're looking for, what we're looking for as fans, what we want from the artists, what the artists are looking for from labels and from everybody else. And I think it's kind of fun to kind of be a part of maybe the solution. And I don't know if there is a problem per se, but I think it's kind of fun to be a part of the dialogue in all of this.
Yeah, definitely. It is a lot of fun. Although I do get intimidated from time to time, like that I'm going to just show up and ask a bunch of questions and not really know what I'm talking about. I worry about that so much because like a lot of like what I do on my other podcast is it's a lot of guesswork, and it's a lot of like I listen to the records, and like if there's weird decisions made about the band throughout their career, I try to figure out why did this happen, and it's all guesswork, and I probably could dig a lot deeper than I dig, but I think part of the charm of the show is just seeing if I got it right or not, but like with these interviews, it's equally as intimidating because I'm talking to the person right away, and if I don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to get called out for it right there. And that's really terrifying when you're talking to a musician that's as prolific as Tommy is. Like this dude's like got more industry experience than I'm ever going to have. Even if I had a chart-topping metal record tomorrow and I went on an illustrious career of 12 albums, I would still never have the amount of industry know-how that he does. So yeah, I would have been terrified to do this interview. I'm not going to lie.
I think the thing that's interesting sometimes in doing these and sort of what is fun to kind of work through, but also is intimidating is, and same with like when we had Michael Wilton on, same when you had Reb Beach, someone that came from the 80s to the 90s to the 2000s, and now, we're getting ready to go into a new decade, and, 2020 right around the corner. And it's like, just think of how much has changed. I mean, we're going from, tapes to CDs, from CDs to still CDs, but then you're starting to get MP3s, then you're starting to vinyl, and then vinyl goes away, vinyl comes back, now you're doing, streaming. Like, think about all the different ways Tommy has had to adapt over his whole career to be malleable in the rock and metal genre, which has gone up and down, in that time frame.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he had to kind of survive through all the trends without succumbing to them. And I thought that was what was so interesting about this newer material, was that really it has all the energy that it ever did, and it's not necessarily concerned with what's sounding like everybody is sounding now. It's just, it wants to sound like Prong, and it does.
And I think without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Tommy Victor of Prong, and we will talk to you guys afterwards. So the pleasure this early evening, afternoon for me. I guess not even evening, it's morning for you. My concept of time is all fucked up. Getting to talk to Tommy Victor, vocalist and guitarist of the legendary Prong, whose latest EP, Age of Defiance, is out November 29th via SPV Steamhammer Records. How are you doing this morning?
I'm pretty good. I'm all right. Got up pretty early. I'm all excited to talk to you. That's why I probably couldn't sleep too well.
It's always funny getting to do these with some people because some people will be like, "Oh, it's really kind of nerve-wracking to do this as well, just for the sake of like, podcast is long form. You never know where things are going to go. Like, will I put my foot in my mouth? Like people are really. I tend to find actually kind of nervous to do these things. So it's interesting. Someone that has had a 10-year career like yourself is, kind of, still excited to do interviews and kind of gets a little bit nervous about doing them.
The thing is, I was looking up your podcast online and. The theme of it is beer drinking, and that's something I don't do.
Actually, that's kind of. We knew we were going to get a little bit of feedback from that, but typically it's just between my co-host and I. But the thing is also that we focus, like our sponsor is a coffee maker. So the brew kind of also can go to like tea because, craft teas now are kind of a thing and craft coffees are a thing. So it's really just kind of about, I do enjoy a craft cocktail, a craft beer and so forth, but I do like a good coffee, a good tea, and I also like a good pun. So I thought, brutally speaking, people coming on and being...
It works.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's so far not really bit us in the ass as far as the name change, but I tend to think that if people actually were to go and look at the interviews we have and listen to it, I think it kind of shows that it's not just kind of a one-trick pony, which I think, kind of segueing perfectly into the EP. This EP was kind of a bit unexpected to me, and I think, I was expecting maybe another full length at this point, and something that we have talked about ad nauseum really on this podcast is kind of the EP versus full length culture, that it seems like we're kind of in the midst of, being more single and EP based. So what was exactly the choice to go with an EP as opposed to pulling out a full length at this point?
What you just said sort of reminded me of what I spoke with somebody earlier this week about. He was adamantly objecting to the EP format, and I had to stand up for it because I was listening to our 0 Days record,
mm-hmm.
and we put a lot of time into, which is the last full-length album. We put so much time into every song and just try to craft them. Now I'm on the word craft, but I thought a lot of the songs got ignored, could have been singles, etc. So that didn't take away from the fact that I wanted to do a full-length record, but when the label posed the idea of an EP, I was like, okay, I could concentrate on a couple of songs, and this would be less tiresome. And if the record didn't do that well, it's no hard feelings. It's like it's just 2 songs that I threw in the garbage can, not like 12 or 13 or whatever. So it's an easier thing for us. But on the other hand, we really dialed in these 2 songs. I think that we concentrated on nailing these with enough time, and that was enjoyable. It was the first time I really did this since a really long time, so I'm really happy. For the artist standpoint, it's easier. Maybe for a real hardcore prong fan, they want a full length album. But again, I was prepared to do that. We got the best of the bunch with Age of Defiance. I had a whole bunch of songs demoed, and Age of Defiance came out as the strongest one. So I don't know what we're going to do with the rest of the songs, but these are the 2 newest Prong songs, and people, if they hear it, I think they'll like it.
I definitely agree with that. It does make me wonder, in the day and age now where obviously it's no secret that, touring is really the money-making opportunity for a lot of bands, unless you're basically at an arena or a stadium level. And so it kind of makes me wonder if that has kind of led to the shift of, maybe helping stay out on the road without there just being like, fuck, man, we have been on this album cycle for 2.5 years. We're tired of playing the songs that are the singles and so forth, and kind of making it more like we'll put out a couple of songs, kind of throw them into the set, keeps things a little fresh, and allows you to kind of pick and choose when you're touring as opposed to the traditional album tour cycle.
That's pretty insightful. Yeah, all of that is true. I think on top of that is the fact that people, I think the hardcore fans will buy the vinyl, and when we have a single vinyl versus an album vinyl, it doesn't really matter because it pretty much goes on their wall or something. Not to sound like just all about marketing, but it's got to that point because people don't buy CDs. It's really difficult to sell them even at shows. So why put out these records. I mean, it's mainly for Spotify and for streaming. It really is, and for your hardcore fans, so that would want the artwork, want the lyric sheets, and want what you get in a package, essentially, and like a limited release here and there, plus these will tie you over into the next Dark Side of the Moon or whatever the hell we do. So I mean, there's a lot of records. We've got forced into making records really quickly, and I can do that, but that gets strenuous. So I would like to, if I'm going to do another record, I would like to spend a lot of time on it and just like relax and just dial it in and be inspired rather than just churning them out for whatever reason.
Well, I mean, if Act of Defiance is something you just churned out, then please keep churning out some more songs.
Oh, thank you.
that.
I'm glad. Yeah. No, I mean, the response has been good. I mean, it sounds really good. I mean, I listened to it and I'm compelled to listen to it. Like, I just got a new pair of earbuds yesterday, and I was like, wow, I'm going to listen to a new Prong record and compare it to the old ones and see what it's like. And I still get the kick out of that myself. I mean, I play music for other people, but, it's good to keep making records, and you listen to them later, and, listen to them now, and, see what you're doing. And, that you get some kind of pride out of that, I guess.
Yeah, something in listening, I don't think anyone is able to listen to a Prong song or a Prong EP and not just be like, hey, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to throw on some of the older stuff too. And I was reminded time and time again over the last week or so of prepping for this and just realizing how distinctly you, the guitar tone, is. And it's kind of interesting in looking back at the band's legacy and realizing how many countless trends and bands have come and gone in that time. And you've stayed, maybe, I don't know if this is a endearing term or not, but unapologetically you. How does it feel to you when kind of looking back and listening back and just being like, man, I think a lot of people are in search of their sound and maybe don't find it. And I think you guys have been very fortunate from the get-go that you've had that distinct sound that is Prong and is you.
It's a weird thing. It's unworldly, really. It hits this barrier, like when I'm making a record and when I'm writing riffs, and I'll come up with riffs. I'm like, well, that's not Prong. I'm like, well, what the hell does that mean? Like, what is, or like, it's stuff gets thrown out a lot, and then things get stylized into what the records are and what we're capable of. Or I don't know really what it is. I really can't put my finger on it. But I think a lot of artists have that feeling too. It's like, where they, if you're a painter, that you use certain materials, and then that's you. So it's like that. You start creating your own boundaries, but not out of anything consciously. It just sort of happens that way. But I appreciate your comments. I mean, I really like that. I mean, like, that's interesting because that's what I listened to yesterday. I'm like, you know what, like I'll hit a guitar, I'll do a guitar thing, and then I'll forget about it. I'm like, well, how the hell did I do that? I mean, it was like it seems like it wasn't me, like when you're listening back on stuff, but it is you, you did it, you wrote it, but that's you, it becomes, maybe it isn't yours. Maybe there's another force working through you. And, I like to feel that because then it takes some of the responsibility off me. But, you start getting all those feelings about when you listen back to your old records, like, well, how did I do that? Like, what was I doing at that time or whatever,
Yeah. Something I kind of had wondered, I know obviously Jasta got his solo record coming out in a couple of weeks as well, and you featured, did a song on that record. And, it kind of had made me wonder, I don't hear a lot about you working with a lot of people. So it kind of made me wonder, when you're doing something like that, what has that kind of done for maybe some of your songwriting, kind of maybe getting outside of the box, working with someone differently, thinking of a different vocalist maybe in mind? Or, is that something you would be more interested in pursuing?
Yeah, I'm kind of lazy on that front. And, my fiance says, well, you should approach this person and do a song with them. I'm like, they're not going to want to work with me, like I'm kind of that kind of guy, but, with Josh, it was just like, I want you. And, Max did that. Cavalera did that with me, several records back with Soulfly. And I love doing that. I mean, like that, I just get so energized. And I think when Josh had me involved in that song, 13 of Years, it's a killer track. I was like, it energized me a lot. Like I thought it made me feel like, like I was, relevant to something. So yeah, I mean, those things really, they definitely helped me a lot, and I'd love to do more. And guys like Josh, I mean, he's such an amazing dude. Like, he does so much and gets other people involved, and I'm jealous of that. I sort of get afraid of approaching people. He doesn't have that fear. He'll call up anybody and ask them, and people feel like they're, they don't feel obliged. They feel like they want to do it. So it's really cool.
Yeah. It's something, and I think Joss has even said this a couple of times, but, contrary maybe to some of the people that listen to this podcast probably getting a little bit upset that I'm not as quote-unquote a diehard metalhead as some of the other people, but I do tend to listen to a lot of old school rap and hip-hop and stuff like that, and pop, and something that I've always noticed that they have done, and I think Josh is a big proponent of doing this in the rock and metal genres, is kind of basically collaborating and kind of growing the fan bases of each other, so that way that rock and metal are on a bigger spectrum. And it kind of makes me wonder, do you think that, having someone like Josh to do this and doing songs with so many people from all across the boards is a step in the right direction to kind of keep rock and metal at the forefront and kind of expanding to get to a bigger demographic? Or do you think that it's just the industry is too competitive, that's never going to succeed like it does in the rock and the pop and rap worlds?
I agree with both those statements. I mean, I think it's a great idea to try to do it, but to try to compete with the pop world, just look at Spotify numbers. It's just unbelievable. Like these, like DJs that, I have no idea who they are, and they're getting, 60, 70 million plays per song. And, somebody like, like Prong, I mean, we're lucky. You're lucky if you get, 100,000 on some songs or whatever, or, you know what I mean? Like it's just so small. It's so much smaller than the pop world. And, I don't know why that is. I just think that, I mean, like you said, it's a crossover thing. I think what Jossa does is great. I mean, like I love that, but I mean, to think that you're competing with any other genre is unrealistic.
Do you think it's because sometimes in doing these, I like to try to work my way through maybe the answer or come to at least a solution, and all I can come up with is that maybe with how few pieces of the pie there are once you have labels, management, so forth, that are taking their cut, and then what you're left with, that people aren't willing to even share what little bit they're getting to try to help make it be bigger for everyone down the road, thinking of the long term and only thinking about the now. Do you think that short-sightedness is maybe the problem that's kind of hitting the rock side of the industry, perhaps?
I mean, I'm finding you very insightful. I mean, this is unusual. I mean, kudos to you. Absolutely. Where I've noticed for myself that I've had to get a little bit more greedy as this business gets more difficult, and I don't do a good job at that because I like to share, and you know what I mean. Like even with the producer that I've been working with, I cut him in on the songs. So, because he doesn't write all the stuff, but like, even if he goes, you know what, man, like, I think maybe you should try to put a different verse in there. So go home and, work on that. So, I go home and work on my rig and do that. And then, so I'm like, well, dude, you're getting writing credits for this, so, I'm more like that, but, I think a lot of people are worried about those things. I mean, publishing, etc. It's very difficult, man. It really is. It's trying to get any little nickel and dime here and there is a headache these days. So I think people are going to be people start scrambling a little bit more.
Kind of shifting up gears a little bit, something that, when listening to the band, I had told a handful of people that I was doing this chat with you, and, I told my dad about it, and he goes, "Oh, snap your finger, snap your neck." And I was like, yeah, there's more than that. And it kind of put me on a different thinking path there for a little bit where, you have such a wealth of material and plenty of quote unquote hits to the diehard Prong fans. But it does make me wonder, is it a blessing to have a song like Snap Your Finger, Snap Your Neck in the set, or does it kind of become a bit of a curse because the quote unquote fans only want to hear that one song?
I mean, again, it's amazing some of these statements, because like it's true both ways. I mean, we lost a lot of fans from the general metaldom when that song became big, because they're like, oh, sell out, or what are they trying to do? Like it's like this is not real metal. This is not really hardcore. So a lot of fans that were into the earlier records when that came out were like, screw these guys. And we've never gotten those people back. And I don't know why, but there was a huge exodus, and we gained more of the fair weather fans with the hit song, and they don't really show up now neither. So it's a problem. But again, I being a kid that listened to singles and was into, buying 45s as a kid and, blah, blah, blah. And, was a song oriented guy. I'm very proud of that song. And I'm like, well, at least I got one song that, crossed over and that people rock to and on a big level. So, it has its benefits and it has its faults to it too. So I mean, I like that song. I like playing it every night. People are into it. But again, I think that we roll the dice, and some people aren't into it, and for whatever reason.
Something that was kind of interesting, talking a little bit more about the EP again, since that's actually why you're on the show. Your live versions of the songs, I had to make sure and go back when I had the promo link that they did say live and that they were live, because I was like, this sounds like a studio recording. Like, I was expecting it to be like, hearing crowd noise and, the ohs kind of things or something like that. And I was like, I didn't know if maybe live was more live in the room, like in the studio kind of a recording where it's all like a one take, or if that was actually live at a show. And if so, then I think people really should listen to it and be excited to go see you guys again, because your sound is dialed the fuck in. I'll say that.
Well, I think what happened was we recorded a whole bunch of live shows, and then we did one in the studio with a live audience, and in order to make it all sound like together, we did another session in the live studio. So in order to sound together, we sort of blacked out any kind of audience thing. So everything was like sort of gated out, or it was limited. So that's the way it sounds like that. And the reason why I wanted it to sound like that too is because basically because of the song Rude Awakening, I can't listen to the album version of that song because I didn't like the mix on that whole album. And I'm like, when I hear that, the mix on the album, I'm like, I get ill because it's not the way I wanted the song to be at all. And, no one listened to me. So the live version is sort of the way I wanted it to be. So like, it's sort of like, instead of making it this, I didn't want it to be this huge production. So we said, I want to cut this thing without making a re-record of the whole album. So, a lot of the songs are like that on, that we recorded, that again, live was like, I felt that the live versions inevitably were better than, the studio versions.
Absolutely. I know you got an interview right behind me. So what is the rest of, I'll just fucking not even say this year. What does 2020 have in store for you guys?
Well, first of all, we're going out with Unearth in Europe. That's going to be in Dust Bolt. That's happening in February. So pretty excited about that. That just got announced today. I got some Danzig gigs. I play guitar with Danzig still, so I got some Danzig stuff going on.
Okay.
So we're trying to fit in like South America with Prong, and then Asia. So I don't know how much America we're going to do, because we just did a whole bunch. We did, a Hatebreed Obituary tour, and then we just got off the tour with Agnostic Front. So, we've done America a lot. I don't know if we missed any people. It's hard to people even know when shows are these days. It's just gotten so weird. It's like I get it all the time. It's like, we just played Tucson, and then I get an email. I go, when are you guys playing at Tucson? I mean, it happens all the time. It's amazing. I think it has a lot to do with some of the age group of our fans. Is how do you reach these people? I mean, but anyhow, we're going to have a busy year. I'm going to have a busy year, regardless. So we may try to do American tour. It's got to be something good. Like if the Foo Fighters asked us out, you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
It's like I don't. I want to do something that's. I hate going out and doing tours that are just like ugh. Like we want to do something that's strong.
Absolutely.
So.
And then lastly, where can everyone find you online?
Well, right now, I mean, it's right now. It's prongmusic.co. We have to switch over because it got hijacked by I have a dispute with my ex-manager, and this scumbag hijacked my domain, which is prongmusic.com. So it's prongmusic.co. We're trying to get that up right now, and then Prong Music at Facebook, and then Instagram Prong the Band, and Prong Music Tommy Victor on Twitter. So that's it.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time, and hopefully see
John,
you,
thank you, man,
around these parts in the Midwest somewhere next year.
Great questions, very insightful. You're doing an amazing job. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, buddy.
So that was my conversation with Tommy Victor of Prong. Like I said, I definitely kind of put my big boy pants on and decided to bring my A game once I realized that he wasn't a fan necessarily of us just by checking us out and seeing, like Dan said, that everything kind of is splattered with saying like, oh, we're a beer and metal drinking podcast, and so forth. And that's kind of the unfortunate thing sometimes when you have to come up with a quick bio of like, what is your show, in like something that can be read on a tiny little screen. And when we were coming up with a new name, I know I did, like, I mean, I think I kind of, like, Dan kind of had wanted to steer the ship in this direction, and then I was like, I like stupid punny things, so it was one of those things, like, I think I came up with the name, but I know, like, between Dan and I was like, do you think this is ever going to bite us in the ass? Like, do you think people are going to see that and then start going like, well, I don't drink, so I don't want to be on the show? And Dan, I'll give him all the credit in the world. He was very self-assured that the quality of what we do over here is going to stand on its own, and that the other thing is just kind of that. It's the other thing to the show. But, no one's really coming to hear us. I mean, and that's fine. We're just basically the buffer on either end of the thing that people came to listen to. But this is something that does happen on occasion where someone will come on. Like, there have been some publicists who are like, do you need someone who drinks beer? Because if you do, we'll give you someone else in the band. And it's like, it's kind of interesting to kind of see how people treat us and just assume that we're kind of this one thing.
Yeah, and I mean, out of the amount of people that we've contacted over the time since we changed the name, which is about a year now, we've only had like one person come back and say anything.
2.
Oh, okay. And so like that's really, I mean, that's out of hundreds of people.
Yeah.
So like, who cares? It's literally one of those, well, I guess you're just never going to be on an episode of Brutally Speaking. Sorry.
Well, I think the other thing, too, and something that was kind of in parallel, thinking about it after the fact, was, that's kind of how I feel like Tommy has kind of been throughout his career, is, there might have been people who were like, oh, well, you guys are Prong, you're a hardcore band, or you're a metal band, or you're this thing. And Tommy has never really been just one thing. He's been a lot of things, but whatever he does and whatever Prong is, it's undeniably Prong. It's undeniably him.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, as I've kind of sat on this episode, now that, we've had it for a couple of weeks, and I went back and listened to it, it just kind of, it's interesting kind of thinking and seeing the parallels between Prong's career and kind of what we did in the rebrand and so forth. And me like, yeah, like we are those things, but we're also these things too. We can be multifaceted. And it's kind of funny because, when we talked about the success of Snap Your Fingers, Snap Your Neck, and I was like, is it a gift or is it a curse or both? Because, like I said, my dad was like, oh, Prong, Snap Your Fingers, Snap Your Neck. And it's like, yeah, everyone knows that song, but there's more song. Like, I hope Age of Defiance becomes the next big hit for the band because I think it's genuinely that fucking good.
Totally.
But it is one of those things, like, it's like, it was wild for him to sit there and go, like, it cost us our old fans. And then
Yeah.
the quote-unquote new ones didn't stick around. So then it's like, well, we're damned if we did and damned if we didn't. And now we just are. And it's really interesting to think about.
Yeah, it's like, what do? I guess I'll just do what I want if those are my options, you know? Like,
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the career Prong has had and the fact that they've just been so uncompromisingly them is, honestly, it's an inspiration. I mean, you see, I mean, sometimes, like, I joke about this band as far as the career they have, but I'm like, they're still fucking here. Actually, two bands. But one is Crazy Town. Like, everyone shits on that band. They're basically known for a song, and it's a Chili Peppers, like, sample. But it's a thing where it's like, they still exist. They're still around. They're someone's favorite band. And
Yeah.
you know what? Fuck it. Like, they could have packed it up, but they still are around. Or like Head PE. A lot of people, you see the Lamb Goat comments of like, this is still a band. And it's like, they're still a band. They've still been doing it. They're getting ready to go on 20 years of like their first big record. And
Yeah.
it's like, there's something to be said. I think we need to stop putting down bands that are still around 10, 15, 20 years, after their quote-unquote heyday, and actually start embracing the fact that these bands are still around. Because at what point do we start honoring a legacy?
yeah. Well, it's interesting. Finn McKinney just did a video about that, about how bands will have like a life cycle, and he used I don't remember exactly which bands he used. He used like Slipknot, The Devil Wears Prada, and like Limp Bizkit as an example. How those were all bands that started off like whenever they were really underground, everybody, all the unpleasable metal fans loved them because they weren't mainstream. And then when they got mainstream, everybody hated them for a period of years. But then, like, if they can survive the period of years that they're hated, then the fact that they've just been around so long means that everybody starts liking them universally. And I think the best example there was Slipknot, and Limp Bizkit was a really good example too, where they were like, everybody claimed to hate Limp Bizkit, and now, in 2019, people pretty much only have positive things to say.
Right.
So, like, those bands still exist. And now a band like Prong's a little bit different in the sense that, like, they never really, I don't ever remember there being a lot of hate on Prong or them being, they've played the big shows, they've had the massive career, but they've never had, I don't feel like they've really had to endure the hate that a lot of these newer trendier bands have.
The thing that I was thinking about that actually though, because like I said, I was so surprised to hear him, say like that was kind of what he had to endure or what the band had to endure, because like you said, I don't remember a time where like anybody you talk to when you mention Prong, it's always like, man, yeah, that band's great. Like they seem to be held in such high regard by a lot of people in the genre, and it's weird. And the only thing I can kind of put my finger on as to why maybe it's so surprising to us is because that happened when there wasn't the internet. So like not everyone literally had a voice to go to Twitter and be like, yo, Prong, you fucking sellouts with this snap your finger, snap your neck bullshit. I'm going to snap this CD and I'm never supporting you guys again. Like, you didn't see that. You didn't hear it.
Yeah. Dude, I don't know anybody right now that hates Prong.
I mean, I don't either.
I don't know anybody that does, and it's not that they haven't been heard, especially in my circle of friends, we've always been pretty big fans. So like, I mean, I believe him when he says that there was hate. And it's possible that I'm just too young to remember it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's really weird. Sometimes I think any podcast you ever listen to, especially with those that are, like a Josta or like a Lead Singer Syndrome or any of these podcasts, with people still actively in the music industry, playing and touring, I do think, and actually Doc was talking about it when he mentioned us in the episode of the X-Men podcast that he had, where he was kind of talking, about the fact that, he brought up that is the people you see commenting online, are they the vocal minority or the vocal majority? And I don't know, it's just kind of interesting to kind of think about how the internet's great in the fact that it allows us to all, bring people together from far, far away and build a sense of community. But at the same time, it fucking tears everyone down because for whatever reason, people feel the need to shit on something immediately and just kind of have the first reaction, literally like the comment first and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know, I mean, I think I know we've talked about this before and just the bigger narrative of everything. And you know, that's kind of what I was saying. Like, it's fun to kind of be a part of figuring this out and kind of, I guess, being the spark of conversation. You know, that's kind of why I wish more people would comment on our podcast sometimes. Like, some of these things that we're discussing in this, it's like, obviously we can see that hundreds and hundreds of people are listening to this podcast every week, but it's one of those things where I wish people would take some of the ideas maybe that we're expressing within this thing and commenting beyond, you know, just our conversation and keep it going, because I think it's in that maybe we find ourselves and find where we're trying to go and what we're looking for, because that to me is the interesting thing about doing this sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going out and finding where the narrative is, and sometimes we succeed, sometimes we don't, but you know, I enjoy the talks that we have. So
yeah. Kind of in wrapping up though, tonight I am drinking another one of my Crook and Marker. I have the strawberry lemon one at this point. I think this is my favorite out of the little simple pack that I have. Although, like I said previously, all of these are fucking solid, so it doesn't matter what one you get, they're all delicious. Dan, what are you drinking? I know you're probably drinking some kind of Elysian. It's winter time, so I don't know if you have the Thanksgiving Day platter version variety pack.
No, I've got no, I'm just drinking Dayglow. Drinking the same beer I was drinking on the Under Oath podcast. But yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I love this Dayglow stuff, man. It's pretty good. It might actually be my replacement for Space Dust.
Well, I mean, I feel like Space Dust would be more adequate for a winter drink, you know, Space Dust, snow.
Well, they actually do have the Elysian Bifrost, which is more of just like a winter ale. It's still like 9% or something crazy like that, but it's kind of a more bitter winter ale, but kind of fills the stomach up better.
Wanted to bring to light, I actually drank a couple of beers the other day. I grabbed a little Mix and Match 4-pack. I posted it up on the Instagram page, which we'll get to the plugs on that in here in just a second. So I ended up grabbing which I think this is actually becoming my new favorite brewery here in Michigan, but Saugatuck. You might have remembered me drinking the blueberry lemonade shandy. Super good, great like summer beer.
I feel like I made fun of you about that. Yeah.
Yeah, you probably did. But they have a peanut butter porter that is just like, I took a sip of it. My wife and I were sitting in bed watching TV, and I cracked open the can and started drinking it. And my wife goes, "I wish I could have videoed your face because it just looked." And I go, actually. While that happened, I was messaging with Mark from Nothing More, who will be coming up on the podcast shortly, and because we just go back and forth with the various beers and drinks we're having. And I sent him a thing, and he goes, "It looks scrumptious," and I immediately started laughing because I remember, obviously, the Will Ferrell skit that was from SNL, and honestly, it might be one of my new favorite beers. It is so smooth and creamy, and just it's so good. Saugatuck is just killing it with all their flavors. Like every beer that they're putting out, whatever the flavor profile, like whatever it says on the can, it is exactly that. Like it's shocking how well they are able to make their beers right now. So if you are in the Michigan area or the Midwest area and you're in the distribution area of Saugatuck Brewing, do yourself a favor, pick up whatever beer that they have that sounds even remotely good to you. And I promise you it probably will be as good or better than you're expecting. Next up, I grabbed two Shorts beers, Shorts Brewing. I grabbed their Go Juice, which was a milkshake-inspired India Pale Ale with marshmallow fluff, milk sugar, and vanilla. And it was pretty solid. It was one of those that, like, I wasn't so overwhelmingly, like, I honestly expected with the IPA kind of milkshake-inspired IPA, I kind of was honestly expecting it to be more heavy on the marshmallow kind of, because I mean, with an IPA, you kind of would assume the sweeter flavor kind of would come out.
Totally.
I got like a little bit of hints of the vanilla and so forth. It was okay. Like, I think maybe it was one of those, like, I kind of wish I could have grabbed another bottle to kind of really get an idea of like what I'm tasting, because I just kept drinking it going like, there's the IPA. It's kind of like a milkshake IPA. Okay, like it had a little bit too much going on, I think, for me to really comprehend what I was like, to pull apart all the flavors I was tasting at the time. I'm not a big sour person. This is something that Mark and I go back and forth on. Mark's a big sour guy, and I'm like, dude, I haven't had a sour I like. I live here where like Jolly Pumpkin's a thing, and they basically all their beers are sours and so forth, and I'm just not a fan. But this one sounded really good. It was the Shorts Brewery's Hopricot sour.
Hopricot, okay.
It was a hopped American sour ale with apricots, and I gotta say, it might be the only sour beer I've ever had that I liked.
Interesting.
I think because the apricot did a good job of kind of balancing out the bitterness of the sour. So it kind of like went from sour with a little bit of that tarty apricot flavor. So it wasn't so like, oh God, like, and the weird thing is like, I feel like I should like sour beers because I love sour candies and shit. So it's like, why don't I like sour beer?
Yeah, I like sour beer just for that reason, because I like sweet tarts and sprees and gobstoppers and all that stuff.
Yeah, same. I love all those same things, but I pretty much I have just not found a sour beer I like. But this was one that I did like. So shout out to Shorts for making the first sour beer I actually didn't hate. Last on the list is a new Bell's beer called This One Goes to 11 Ale. It is it's an Imperial Red IPA. So it intrigued me because it's like you got an Imperial, then you got a red, and then you have an IPA. And I feel like those three things, like, it just intrigued me because I was like, what's going to be the dominant flavor? How is that going to taste? Because those are kind of three completely different flavors. And this one was a big miss for me. It was not good. And the sad part is I don't know what part of it was the miss. I don't know if it was the red. I don't know if it was the IPA. I don't know if it was the Imperial. It just was a lot going on, and I think sadly, like, where the go juice of Shorts with like the milkshake IPA with the vanilla and the marshmallow and the all that stuff, where that kind of worked to its advantage, this kind of had too much going on fighting for your palate that it was just like, yeah, no, I don't want that. So those are some beers that we posted recently on our social media, and I kind of wanted to give a little bit more of a little background to, because sometimes we post these drinks and it's like we don't talk about them on the podcast, so
right.
Wanted to give them their fair shake. But all of the beer drinking aside, if you would like to keep up with Prong, well, it's simple enough. Facebook, Prong Music. Instagram, Prong the Band. And Twitter at Prong Music. If you would like to keep up with Tommy Victor, pretty much the Twitter is his handle, it looks like, because it says Prong Music /Tommy Victor. If you'd like to follow him on Instagram, it's TommyVictor23. If you would like to keep up with Metal Nexus, it's simply metalnexus.net, Facebook at Metal Nexus, Instagram at metal.nexus, and Twitter at metal_nexus. And Dan will tell you where he can be found on the Nexus of the Internets.
Well, on the Internet Nexus, I can be found on Facebook under my name. I can be found on Twitter at DiscussMetalDan, on Gmail at DiscussMetalDan@gmail.com. Very creative name, I know. And you can find my other show, Discography Discussion, at DiscussMetal.com.
And if you would like to keep up with all things this podcast, it's simple enough. Bruce Speak Pod, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Check us out on YouTube. We have all of our shows over there where applicable. If you would like to check out some of the video interviews we've done, those are there as well. If you would like to support us monetarily, you can do such at patreon.com/BruceSpeakPod. Holidays are coming. Support us. Give yourself some cool perks and some sweet gifts and so forth. If you would like to support us non-monetarily, you can do that as well. Rate, review, subscribe. You hear it all the time on every other podcast. We do the same. Helps us, goes a long way. Helps this podcast get into iTunes charts, Stitcher charts. We've actually been charting quite a bit over on Stitcher. I think we were in the Australian top 100 on iTunes. So I mean, it's just one of those things. Like, we're trying to grow this podcast, and these things matter in our algorithmic society that we live in. And if you would like to keep with our show sponsors, The Bean Bastard, you can do that over at thebeanbastard.com. Facebook and Instagram are at The Bean Bastard. And we have a new sponsor as well. That's right, we have a new sponsor. If you checked out our socials, you've already seen it. It is On Point Pomade, Maddie Mullins of Memphis Mayfire's own line of hair and beard care products. Very excited to bring them on board. If you head over to onpointpomade.com, use the code BSP15. It lets them know that you are shopping because of us. Get you some awesome hair care products, some stuff for your beard. Be looking good. It is the holiday season. you got to look good. Got to. So, again, head over to onpointpomade.com. Use the code BSP15 and get hooked up. We also got some products from the company themselves. We got some pomades, the premium pomade, the matte pomade, and a beard oil. We're going to be doing a giveaway here pretty soon. We're just kind of trying to figure out what that looks like. So, very much want to send a huge thank you to Maddie Mullins and On Point Pomade for coming on as a new sponsor of the show. We also got our pins. We've been talking a lot about them. We have them. If you live in the U.S., $15 will get you a pin. We will send it anywhere in the U.S., so that includes the shipping and handling costs. Anywhere outside the U.S., let us know. We can figure something out. We want to get you these pins. I think they're pretty cool. Want to thank Jason Wood again for doing the design. Head over to 1979 Design on Instagram. Check out some of the pins that they've done. If you're interested, throw them a message, hook it up, and get some pins made for yourself. These came out really great, and I'd like to get them to you. Those are also on our socials. And for the Brutally Speaking podcast, I am John.
And I am Dan.
And we will talk to you all next time.